Welcome to my channel. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and like my video. When my daughter-in-law told me to leave her house, I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't beg her to let me stay. I just smiled, nodded quietly, and began packing my things. She looked surprised by my calm reaction, maybe even a little confused. But what else could I do? The truth is, I had seen it coming for months. I had felt the coldness growing between us, word by word, silence by silence. And when that final moment arrived, it hurt less than I expected. Maybe because my heart had already been breaking for a long time. My name is Margaret, and I am 72 years old. I raised my son alone after my husband passed away when he was only 8. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, to make sure he had everything he needed. I wanted him to have a good education, a stable life, and a future full of hope. And he did. He grew up to be a kind, successful man with a beautiful family of his own. For years I thought I had done everything right. I thought I had built something strong. But I learned the hard way that love, sacrifice, and good intentions don't always protect you from loneliness. This is the story of how I lost my place in the family I helped build. It's a story about misunderstandings, pride, and the quiet pain of being slowly pushed to the side. But it's also a story about forgiveness, letting go, and finding peace even when your heart feels shattered. I'm telling you this not for sympathy, but because I know there are others out there who feel the same way I did. Invisible, unnecessary, forgotten. If that's you, I want you to know that you're not alone, and that it's okay to feel hurt. It's okay to grieve, and it's okay eventually to move on. Let me take you back to the beginning so you can understand how we got here. My son's name is Daniel. He was my whole world after his father died. I remember those early years so clearly. The late nights when he couldn't sleep, the mornings when I'd wake up before dawn to prepare his lunch and my own before heading to work. I cleaned offices in the evening and worked at a grocery store during the day. My hands were always rough, my back always aching. But I never complained. Not once. Because every time I looked at Daniel's face, I knew it was all worth it. He was a bright boy. Curious, gentle, always asking questions. He loved reading, and I made sure he had books even when we could barely afford food. I'd go to the library and borrow as many as they'd let me take. We'd sit together at our tiny kitchen table, and he'd read to me while I folded laundry or prepared dinner. Those were some of the happiest moments of my life. As he grew older, Daniel worked hard in school. He earned a scholarship to university, and I cried the day he left for college. Not because I was sad, but because I was so proud. He called me every week. He sent me letters. He never forgot where he came from or the sacrifices I made. And when he graduated and found a good job, the first thing he did was send me money to fix the roof of our old house. That's the kind of man he was. Thoughtful, loving, loyal. Then he met Emily. I'll never forget the first time he brought her home. She was beautiful, with long dark hair and a warm smile. She worked as a teacher and she seemed kind and polite. I liked her immediately. Daniel was so happy around her, and that made me happy too. They got married 2 years later, and I helped with the wedding as much as I could. I sewed some of the decorations myself, and I baked cookies for the guests. It wasn't much, but it was my way of showing love. After the wedding, they moved into a small apartment across town. I didn't see them as often, but that was okay. I understood they needed their own space, their own life. I called every few days just to check in, and they'd visit me on Sundays for lunch. It was a good rhythm, a peaceful rhythm. I felt like I still had a role in Daniel's life, even if it was smaller than before. Then Emily got pregnant. Oh, the joy I felt when they told me I was going to be a grandmother. I cried happy tears that night, imagining holding a little baby in my arms again. Daniel asked me if I'd help them when the baby arrived, and of course I said yes. I would have done anything for them, anything at all. Their daughter, Emma, was born on a rainy Tuesday morning in April. She was tiny, perfect, with her father's eyes and her mother's nose. I stayed with them for the first 2 weeks, cooking meals, cleaning the house, and helping Emily through those exhausting early days. She seemed grateful then. She thanked me often, smiled at me, and even hugged me once when I brought her tea at 3 in the morning while she was breastfeeding. But something began to change after those first few weeks. At first, the changes were small. So small I almost didn't notice them. Emily started to seem distant. When I'd offer to help with Emma, she'd say, "It's okay, Margaret, I can handle it." At first, I thought she was just trying to be independent, to prove to herself that she could manage motherhood on her own. I respected that. I didn't push. But then she started saying it more and more, even when I could see she was exhausted, even when the dishes were piling up and the laundry was overflowing. One Saturday, I came over to visit and brought a casserole I'd made. Emily opened the door, holding Emma on her hip, and glanced at the dish in my hands. "Oh," she said softly, "you didn't have to do that." "I know," I replied with a smile, "but I wanted to. I thought it might save you some time tonight." She took the dish without much expression and set it on the counter. "Thanks," she said, but her voice was flat. Daniel was at work, so it was just the two of us. I tried to make conversation, asking her how Emma was sleeping, if she needed anything. But her answers were short, polite but distant. I stayed for about an hour and then I left. As I walked back to my car, I felt a strange heaviness in my chest. Something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. The weeks went by and I started to feel it more and more. Emily's smiles became rare. She stopped inviting me inside when I visited. Instead, she'd meet me at the door, chat for a few minutes, and then say she had things to do. I tried not to take it personally. I told myself she was just tired, just adjusting to being a new mother. But deep down, I felt a wall growing between us. Then one day I made a mistake. I had a key to their apartment. Daniel had given it to me months before, just in case of emergencies. One afternoon, I decided to stop by and drop off some baby clothes I'd found at a thrift store. They were in perfect condition, barely worn, and I thought Emily would appreciate them. I knocked on the door, but no one answered. I knew they were home because I could hear Emma crying inside. So I used my key and let myself in. Emily was in the living room trying to calm Emma down. She looked up when she saw me and her face went pale. "Margaret," she said sharply, "what are you doing here?" I brought some clothes for Emma," I said, holding up the bag. I knocked, but no one answered, and I heard the baby crying, so I thought, "You can't just walk in like that," she interrupted, her voice rising. "This is our home. You need to ask first." I felt my face flush with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," I stammered. "I didn't mean to. Just, please don't do that again," she said, taking the bag from my hands. She didn't even look inside. She just set it on the couch and turned her attention back to Emma. I left without another word. My hands were shaking as I drove home. I felt humiliated, confused, and hurt. I had only wanted to help. I had only wanted to be useful. But I had crossed a line I didn't even know existed. That night, Daniel called me. "Mom," he said gently, "Emily told me what happened today." "I'm so sorry," I said quickly. "I didn't mean to upset her. I just wanted to." "I know, Mom. I know you meant well. But you have to understand, Emily needs her space. She's still adjusting to everything, and sometimes it's hard for her when you just show up." His words stung, but I nodded even though he couldn't see me. "I understand," I whispered. "I won't do it again." "Thank you," he said. "I love you, Mom. You know that, right?" "I know," I replied. "I love you too." But after that call, something broke inside me. I started to pull back. I stopped visiting as often. I stopped calling every few days. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to make Emily uncomfortable. So I gave them space. Lots of space. Months passed. Emma grew bigger, started crawling, started babbling. I saw her occasionally, but only when Daniel brought her to visit me. Emily rarely came along. And when she did, she stayed quiet, scrolling on her phone while Daniel and I talked. I felt like a stranger in my own son's life. Then one day, Daniel called and asked if I could move in with them for a while. "Mom," Daniel said over the phone, his voice tired, "we need your help." It was late September. The leaves were starting to turn orange and gold. I had been sitting in my living room reading a book when his call came through. "What's wrong?" I asked, sitting up straight. "Emily's been really overwhelmed," he said. "Work has been stressful for both of us, and Emma's getting into everything now that she's walking. We're barely keeping up. I was wondering, would you consider staying with us for a few months? Just to help out around the house and with Emma?" My heart leaped. I tried not to sound too eager. "Of course," I said. "I'd be happy to help." "Are you sure?" he asked. "I don't want to inconvenience you. Daniel, you're my son. It's not an inconvenience. I'll pack my things and be there this weekend." And I packed my clothes, my books, and a few personal items, and I moved into their guest room. Felt good to be needed again, to have a purpose. I told myself this was a fresh start, a chance to rebuild my relationship with Emily, and to be a real part of Emma's life. The first few days went well. I cooked breakfast every morning, tidied up the living room, and played with Emma while Emily worked from home. She seemed relieved to have the extra help, and she even thanked me a few times. I felt hopeful. I felt useful. But then the small tension started again. One morning, I washed Emma's bottles and put them in the cabinet where I thought they belonged. When Emily came into the kitchen, she opened the cabinet, frowned, and moved them all to a different shelf. "I keep them here," she said flatly, not looking at me. "Oh," I said. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." She didn't respond. She just continued organizing the bottles the way she wanted them. Another time, I folded the laundry and left it on the couch for her. When she saw it, she sighed and picked up one of Emma's shirts. "This isn't how I fold her clothes," she said. "I can refold them," I offered. "It's fine," she said. But her tone suggested it wasn't fine at all. These small moments piled up. The way she'd redo things I'd already done. The way she'd correct me in front of Daniel. The way she'd go silent whenever I entered the room. I tried to brush it off. I tried to tell myself I was being too sensitive. But it was hard. Every day I felt a little more invisible. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late October. Daniel was away on a business trip, and it was just Emily, Emma, and me at home. I had put Emma to bed and was washing the dishes when Emily came into the kitchen. She stood in the doorway for a moment, watching me. "Margaret," she said quietly, "can we talk?" I turned off the water and dried my hands. "Of course," I said. "What's on your mind?" She took a deep breath. "I think it's time for you to go back to your own place." The words hit me like a cold wave. I stared at her, not sure I'd heard correctly. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she said, her voice calm but firm, "that I appreciate everything you've done, but we don't need you here anymore. Emma's doing fine. I'm managing. And honestly, it's been hard having you here." "Hard?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "Yes," she said, looking me in the eyes. "You're always hovering. Always redoing things. Always offering help I didn't ask for. I feel like I can't breathe in my own home." Tears welled up in my eyes, but I blinked them back. "I was only trying to help," I said. "I know," she replied. "But I didn't ask for this much help. Daniel asked you to come, but he didn't ask me first. And now I feel like I'm being crowded." I felt my chest tighten. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said. "I never meant to make you uncomfortable." "I know," she said again, "but it doesn't change how I feel." There was a long silence. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to remind her of all the meals I'd cooked, all the nights I'd stayed up with Emma so she could sleep, all the sacrifices I'd made. But what would be the point? She had already made up her mind. "When do you want me to leave?" I asked quietly. "As soon as you can," she said. "Maybe this weekend?" I nodded. "Okay." She left the kitchen without another word. I stood there alone, staring at the sink full of soapy water, and I finally let the tears fall. I packed my things the next morning. Emily didn't help. She stayed in her room with Emma, and I moved quietly through the guest room, folding my clothes and placing them back into my suitcase. It felt surreal, like I was watching myself from far away. Daniel called that afternoon. Emily must have told him. "Mom," he said softly, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know she felt that way." "It's okay," I said, even though it wasn't. "No, it's not okay," he insisted. "You came to help us, and now she's asking you to leave. That's not fair. She has a right to feel comfortable in her own home." I said. "I understand. But you're my mother," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "You've done so much for me. For us." "I know," I whispered. "But sometimes love means stepping back, even when it hurts." There was silence on the other end. Then he said, "I'll come see you as soon as I get back. I promise." "Okay," I said. "I'd like that." I left that Saturday morning. Emily was polite as I walked out the door. She even said thank you. But her eyes were cold, distant. I hugged Emma one last time, kissed her soft cheek, and then I left. The drive home felt longer than it ever had before. I cried the whole way. Not loud, gasping sobs, but quiet tears that streamed down my face in steady silence. I felt rejected. I felt useless. I felt like I had lost my place in the family I had spent my whole life building. For weeks, I barely left my house. I didn't call Daniel. I didn't reach out. I just sat in my quiet home, replaying every moment, every word, every mistake I'd made. I wondered if I had been too overbearing, too involved, too much. Then one evening there was a knock on my door. It was Daniel, and he was holding Emma. "Hi, Mom," he said with a tired smile. I opened the door wider and let them in. Emma toddled over to me, giggling, and I scooped her up into my arms. She smelled like baby shampoo and sweetness. "Where's Emily?" I asked. "At home," he said. "I wanted to come see you. Just the two of us. Well, three of us." We sat on the couch and Daniel sighed deeply. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," he said. "And I owe you an apology." "You don't," I started, but he held up his hand. "Yes, I do," he said. "I asked you to move in without really talking to Emily about it first. I put you in a difficult position, and I put her in one too. You both ended up hurt, and that's my fault." I looked down at Emma, running my fingers through her soft curls. "I should have been more respectful of her space," I said. "I got so caught up in wanting to help that I didn't see how much I was overstepping." "You were just being you, Mom," Daniel said gently. "You've always given everything you have. But Emily, she's different. She needs control over her own home, her own routine. And I should have seen that." "I understand now," I said quietly. We talked for a long time that evening. Daniel told me that he and Emily had been going to counseling, that they were working through their communication issues, that Emily had her own struggles, her own fears, and that my presence had triggered something in her she didn't know how to handle. "She doesn't hate you, Mom," he said. "She's just scared. Scared of not being good enough. Scared of being replaced." "Replaced?" I said, shocked. I would never. I know, he said. But that's how she felt. And feelings aren't always logical. I nodded slowly. I wish she had told me. She wishes she had too, he said. She's working on it. And so am I. Before he left, Daniel hugged me tightly. You'll always have a place in our lives, Mom, he said. Maybe not the way it was before, but you're still Emma's grandmother. You're still my mother. And we need you. Just in a different way. I hugged him back, holding on a little longer than usual. I love you, I whispered. I love you too, he said. It's been a year since that day. A lot has changed, but a lot has also stayed the same. I see Daniel and Emma every other week now. Sometimes Emily comes along. Sometimes she doesn't. And that's okay. I've learned to accept the boundaries she needs. I've learned that loving someone doesn't mean being everything to them. It means respecting who they are and what they need, even when it's hard. Emily and I had coffee together a few months ago. Just the two of us. It was awkward at first, but then we started talking. Really talking. She apologized for how things ended. She explained how overwhelmed she'd felt, how guilty she'd felt for feeling that way. I apologized too, for not recognizing her needs sooner. We're not best friends. We may never be. But we've found a kind of peace, a quiet understanding. And that's enough. Emma is 2 years old now. She calls me Gamma. And every time I hear it, my heart fills up with warmth. She runs to me when I visit, wraps her tiny arms around my legs, and looks up at me with those big, bright eyes. In those moments, I know I haven't lost my place. It's just different now. Smaller, quieter, but still mine. I've also learned to build a life for myself again. I started volunteering at the library, reading to children on Saturday mornings. I joined a gardening club. I reconnected with old friends. I realized that my worth isn't tied to how much I'm needed by others. I have value just as I am. Some days are still hard. I still feel the sting of rejection when I remember that October night. But I've also learned that pain can teach you things, can show you where you need to grow, where you need to let go. If you're reading this or listening to this, and you've ever felt pushed aside by the people you love, I want you to know something. It's not your fault. Love is complicated. Families are messy. People hurt each other even when they don't mean to. But that doesn't mean you're unworthy. Doesn't mean you failed. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is step back. Give people space to grow. Give yourself space to heal. And trust that love, real love, will find a way to survive. Maybe not in the form you expected, but in a form that's true. I still think about the family I helped build, the sacrifices I made, the years I gave, and I don't regret any of it, because all of it led me here, to this quiet, steady place where I've learned to love without losing myself, where I've learned that my place in this world isn't defined by others. It's defined by me. And that's enough. That's more than enough.